Hello, is everyone able to hear me? All right. Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on contemporary concerns of Malay Muslim communities, implications on social cohesion in the Nusantara. My name is Diana and I'll be moderating today's session. Now, socio-political developments in the Nusantara region have again accentuated issues surrounding race and religion in their respective societies. Recent and forthcoming events in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore highlight tensions between different segments of society, which may have newer implications on social cohesion. And this webinar focuses on the contemporary concerns of Malay Muslim communities in these societies today, taking into account, for example, but of course not limited to, the latest developments centering around Malaysia's 15th general election, the Indonesian general elections of 2024, and also in Singapore, the recent developments in Section 3778. This webinar will discuss the perspectives of Malay Muslim communities, political and religious authorities, and civil society in these events. We'll also explore ways the Malay Muslim communities can contribute to wider social cohesion in their respective multicultural contexts into the future. Now, today with us here, we have three highly regarded panelists to discuss the topics we have at hand. They are Prof. Dr. Hamdi Muluk from Universitas Indonesia, Dr. Hugh Wai Wing, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and Dr. Walid Jumblat Abdullah, Nanyang Technological University. Each panelist will have 20 minutes for their respective presentations, and this will be followed by a Q&A session. The chat box has been enabled, and so I hope that you can direct your questions there to be featured in the Q&A session later on. This webinar is also streamed live on Paka's YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube, just type in @Radicalism Studies and you'll be able to access it there as well. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker for today, Prof. Dr. Hamdi Muluk. Prof. Hamdi Muluk is a professor of social and political psychology at the Faculty of Psychology, University of Indonesia, Jakarta. He received his Master of Science in Social Psychology and PhD in Political Psychology at the University of Indonesia. Currently, he is the head of the Political Psychology Lab at the university, and he is also an advisor to the government in the expert panel of the National Counterterrorism Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, and has published more than 50 articles in Indonesian and international psychology journals, as well as 5 books and several recent chapters. Prof. Muluk will be presenting on political Islam in Indonesia, lessons learned from Pemilu 2019 and looking forward to Pemilu 2024. Dr. Muluk, please.
Thank you, Noor. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here for today's discussion. So I will start to share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I would like to present some ideas about political Islam in current Indonesian situation and how we learn from the Pemilu 2019 and looking forward to the Pemilu 2004, the next Pemilu in the next 2 years. So this is outline my presentation. So first, I would like to sketch how the heightened of Islamic aspiration in Indonesian politics, especially after the Suharto post-Suharto era, or we call it the era of reformation, and the situation and how Islam politic or political Islam in Indonesia, in my view, is in the crossroad, and how can we learn from the last decade of 2 election. The phenomena that I would like to mention that it is the rise of political polarization that based on political or Islamic identity. So how this situation that we can project to the next pemilu, or the grand pemilu, or the grand election. So how there would implicate for the, that I call it, the harmonious intergroup, or maybe tensions of intergroup, like the social cohesion, intolerant, outgroup hate, and hate speech, and etc. So I will make it very brief, because the aspiration, there is what do we call it, maybe aspirational tension between the maybe the supporter of Islamic State and the secular state in Indonesia. It is begin that when we first proclaim our proclamation in 1945. At the time, there is hot debate about how should we establish this country, this multicultural nature of the Nusantara, or Indonesia at the time, the many religion and many ethnic, and there is two polar of debate, whether we would establish the Islamic State, or we would establish the secular state. At the time, this tension can be overcome by the adopting Pancasila. First, it is coined by the Sukarno, our first president, for the basis for establish this modern independent Indonesian state. So at the time, this is overcoming, of course, the tension between aspiration of religious state and the secular state. But this tension was not completely resolved. And between 1950 and 1959 period, there is many separation movement. And the prominent one is the aspiration to establish the Islamic State, that we call it. There are many separatist movement, Darul Islam Indonesia in Aceh, in West Java, and also in Sulawesi, but they established Islamic Indonesian Army. But this movement is responded by the hard power of military action that become the traumatic, leave the traumatics for the rest of the supporter of this aspiration for a long time. So during Sukarno, of course, this Islamic Party was dissolved, and aspiration to establish Islamic State also forbidden for a long time during the totalitarian state under Sukarno. But after Sukarno fall, so Suharto regime continues the power, but he also control all the political activities at the time. So 32 years of under their, what political scientists call it, the authoritarian regime under Suharto. So only one party that put in real power. The rest is just the loser, probably. And so at the time, of course, separate Islamic Party that merged in the force by the Suharto, so become United Development Party, but it is fully controlled by the Suharto. So what the political scientists call it, pseudo-democracy at the time. So ideological aspiration to create state-based Islamic State, I think that this is not finished, but now become the underground movement. So this is the underground rebellion. Maybe that is create latent predisposed to Islamic radicalization, end quote. So after Suharto not so popular, so at the time there is a crisis, so economic crisis, then Suharto collapsed. So there is so the aspiration for Islamic politics now giving rise again. So at the time there is the euphoria after Suharto fall. Suddenly we the state let the people express their freedom to establish whatever political party that you can establish. At the time, there is almost there's no new there is 14 new political parties formed at the time, and took part in the election contestation, and at least 13 party can be classified as Islamic party, but they won. They didn't win the Pemilu of 1919. So the number was still dominated by the from the Nationalist Democratic or maybe some Socialist Party. So if we combine of the vote for the Islamic Party from election to election, the Pemilu, or in Indonesia we call it Pemilu, it's only reached in approximately 23 or to 31%. Is very small. So in the current situation, there's still also, if we look at the reality of political Islam, this is the tension between whether the aspiration of this Islamization goes to formal politics, or some supporter want to go to the quote under informal politics. There is tension between you. Some that want politics becoming soft, so they will establish the Islamic Party that goes to election, and some choose the maybe hard approach to struggle politics. Some they give the label for this giroh. Giroh is mean the jihad. There is also tension until I think this is until current that the reality of the Islam in Indonesia is very fragmented. Some want go to Islam that more moderate, and some want go to the Puritans, totalitarian, and the variety of totalitarian like Wahhabism that want to caliphate state like HTI and Khilafatul Muslimin. And so I think that the problem, the relation of Islam and state in Indonesia, that will implicate in the problem of intergroup relation between their supporter and the poor society, that divided by many religion, also ethnic plurality. So I think this is still underground problem or latent problem in Indonesian and contemporary Indonesian society. So we cannot call it very harmonious, maybe in the surface, but we look deeper into their perception, into their sentiment, into their negative, you can see. Now I will show you then the survey next slide. So and this problem probably would rise when we have the political contestation in like Pemilu, in local Pemilu like pemilihan kepala daerah, we call Indonesia Pilkada or Pemilu in 2019. So I will show you. This is our latest studies. We want to see how many cluster of Muslim in Indonesia based on their political aspiration and political attitude. So we found six categories. They call it fundamentalist Muslim, national Muslim. Maybe also we have political Muslim, hijrah Muslim, moderate Muslim, and progressive Muslim. So this is the along the six of the category that they would differ in their aspiration and political attitudes. See, like the fundamentalists should be support the constitution, should be based on Islam. They would support the Sharia, local regulation of Perda. So they also, the president should be Muslim. Then they are quite intolerant in political and so on. Okay, so I would like to give you the illustration of our current also research in investigating political polarization in Indonesia. This is the social network analysis. This is the list of the researcher. So we like to explore whether there is indeed political polarization in Indonesia, because some people speculate, some people say there is no political polarization. It is only the noise that created by the elite, in the Twitter on. There is no impact in the follower. So we like to investigate this very seriously. So we gather 43 million of tweets before, during, and after the 2018 president election. So this is the concept of politicalization, when there is a polarization in the some say that it is the phenomenon of echo chamber of so we try to test our hypothesis that this polarization would be based on political ideology aspiration. So in our lab, we have also developed political ideology scale that never invented before for Indonesian, because this is important. When you measure political ideology spectrum in the West, which is spectrum in the left and the right, or liberal or progressive, but in Indonesia, in our studies, we found that the three dimensions of political ideology. One dimension is whether the state and Islam would be blend. So there is a spectrum from the aspiration of fundamentalists to secular, and also the second dimension is about social values, whether the ideology would be based on conservative values or rigid or traditional values, and the other spectrum is the progressive or liberal, and the other is dimension of economic, whether we would